Are you tired of going on your Tinder date and getting laughed at as you stepped out of your clapped out Camry? Do you wish you drove something that commanded respect? That made you look like you make more than minimum wage? Well, good news, it is that time again. And I know what you're already thinking. Cheap cars that make you look rich. Here comes a list of a bunch of really crappy cars you should never buy. Psych! Well, this time it's different. This is cheap, great cars that make you look rich. We're not talking about broken down Maseratis that you can't afford to maintain. These are properly good cars that make you look like you spent way more money on them than you did. So without further ado, I'm the Squid, this is Ideal Cars. We talk about cheap cars that make you look great, or cheap cars that run forever, or cheap cars that don't run forever. So you should subscribe down below for more of this content. And get ready, strap in like Brad does with the clicks, and let's go.
These days, we all seem to be doing a bunch more online shopping, and that's where today's sponsor, Honey, comes into play. It's the free internet browser extension that scours the internet for promotional codes to give you discounts wherever you like to shop. And it is so easy to install with just 2 clicks. And you'll be able to use it on one of its 30,000 supported websites. It just pops up at checkout and asks you to apply coupons. It's really that simple to save money. Seriously, it starts searching for coupon codes automatically and works on all types of websites. And all you gotta do is hit accept and it'll save you money. Everything from auto part websites, gaming websites, tech websites, literally anything. So if you have a computer, Honey needs to be on it. Just go to joinhoney.com/idealmedia or just click the link down in the description. And be sure to download it because we have it on all our computers here at Ideal. And thank you, Honey, for sponsoring today's video. Now back to the show.
Every time I think about a car that makes you look rich, I think of a big, bad Mercedes. And what's the biggest, baddest Mercedes? It's an S-Class, of course. I mean, if you have to choose one brand that just represents luxury, you gotta go with Mercedes. They're all hitter, no quitter. No one else combines sophistication, technology, and performance quite the way that Mercedes does. Mercedes-Benz is an icon in the luxury car market. They have been at this game for longer than pretty much anybody. I mean, they made some of the very first cars to ever exist, and they've pretty much perfected it at this point. In particular, the S-Class Benz is constantly the bar set by the company for others to try and follow in their wake. More often than not, any kind of like modern high-end luxury feature you find in your car came from a Mercedes S-Class. Things like standard air conditioning, power-assisted steering, even seat belts can trace their roots back to the S-Class. It's for all of these reasons that the S-Class makes our list. I mean, any generation of S-Class is the pinnacle of land yachts. And even other car guys will recognize that you have something special in your hands. So without a doubt, pretty much number one with a bullet of a car that makes you look rich is an S-Class. And specifically a cheap one that makes you look rich is the W220. You see, back in 2005, when the W220 was being made, Mercedes-Benz was really focused on comfort, as opposed to today where it's a lot of tire smoke and performance. So this generation S-Class is perfect for those that want to just cruise around in luxury and maybe impress the good-looking person in the passenger seat. Now, to get yourself the cheapest W220 S-Class, you're gonna be looking at the S350, which comes standard with a 3.7 liter V6, which, you know, isn't a big bad baby V8 or V12 or anything. It's not supercharged, but it has plenty of power to get this land yacht moving. And this is all about looking rich, not about going fast. So what you're getting, the peak of luxury, the peak of technology, the peak of performance from 2005, all for under 10,000 bucks. And sometimes a lot less. Like this one we found for $6,000. Meaning that the S-Class is pretty much impossible to beat when it comes to something cheap that makes you look rich as f***. Hey, real quick, do you wear clothes? Do you like cool clothes that has cars on it? Check out Ideal Media's clothing store up here and this little button up here that's probably there unless you're watching with ad block on, and then we don't get paid and we're gonna go broke and you've ruined us. You've ruined my life. I can't feed my cat. Thanks. Anyway, check out our shirts. But some of you are a little more American. You want something that says I'm rich, but I appreciate domestic manufacture. Well, for you, the Mercedes of America is basically Cadillac. Cadillac's been in the luxury game for a long time. nearly as long as Mercedes. Their lineup over decades has really defined luxury here in America. Even now, they're still making strides. And even more recently than that 2005 S-Class we just talked about, the 2013 Cadillac ATS continues to nail the luxury line. I mean, the ATS was purpose-built to take people who loved their German cars back into the seats of an American-made car. You know, a proper, classic American car. Well, maybe one that's missing a little bit of something. Namely, a V8 under the hood. Bruh. But again, this video is about looking rich, not driving really fast. And sadly, the Cadillac ATS came standard with this moderately respectable 4-cylinder under the hood, which, you know, sounds a little underpowered, sounds a little underwhelming, but you know what? Nobody that sees you pull up is gonna know. All they're gonna know is that your Cadillac ATS definitely looks the part. And also, it's not a total piece of crap. When the Cadillac ATS first came out, the reviews actually praised it. The interior quality is great, driving position is very comfortable, and seeing as how Cadillac designed it to take on the Germans, it really handled well compared to others in its class. It kind of actually punched above its weight. So sure, other Cadillac heads might know that the ATS is the entry level into the brand, but most average people aren't gonna know that when you pull up in it. All they're gonna know is it's gorgeous. It has great modern lines, it's got a freaking shiny Cadillac badge on the grille, and it definitely looks like it costs more than $8,000, which is what we were able to find one for, which is just an insane value for a car made in the last 10 years. That looks like that and has that much heritage. I think you really got to consider the Cadillac brand when you're looking at used cars now, if you can get past all that old man golf course stigma. Now, okay, a 4-cylinder powered American sedan might not be what you're looking for. You want something that actually might be a little fun to drive, and from a brand that has a little more respect and history than Cadillac. Well, good news. You can get yourself a modern day Porsche for a great price. Just, it's not the 996 anymore. Brad already made a video about it. It ruined the market for them. They're going up in value. So it ain't no 911. Now, typically, Porsches are expensive cars that make you look rich. But thankfully, there is one model still in the lineup that caught the depreciation bug pretty hard, meaning it might be in your price range. And we're talking about the Porsche Cayman. This is the mid-engine Porsche that is pretty typically overshadowed by its big brother, the 911. With the 911 being the de facto sports car that everyone goes for. But the Cayman actually has some of its own advantages over the 911. It's smaller, meaning it's easier to park and a little more nimble. It's mid-engined instead of rear-engine. That means it's actually a lot more fun on a back road. And the biggest thing it has over a 911 is it's cheaper. Depreciation is a pretty weird animal, but thankfully it's got its teeth sunk into the Cayman. Meaning that yes, the Cayman is the poor man's 911, but if you're watching this video and you're like me, you are a poor man or woman, and you want a 911, but you can't afford them. Thankfully, the Cayman is there to serve our needs. And the reason it's on this list is it's got a Porsche badge on the trunk, and that pretty much makes you look rich no matter what's underneath it. But again, I can't emphasize this enough. The Cayman's not on here just because it's a cheap Porsche. Its performance is astounding. Track days, back road bombs, canyon runs are all great things to do in a Cayman. Now specifically, we're gonna be talking about the Caymans made around the 2007 model year. And this is when the Cayman really started to hit its stride, so you're getting a good car. The 2.7 liter flat 6 that powers this pumps out 245 horsepower, which is more than enough to make this car a hell of a lot of fun to drive. Now, all of this does come at a cost. This is going to be a little more pricey than the cars we've already talked about. You're looking at around 20 grand for a used Cayman of this type right now. But there's good news. You could maybe get it for a little less if you learn to buy a car like a pro using Brad's ideal car strategies up here. Either way, even at that price, you're getting a fantastic car for the money. Now, so far, every car on this list comes from a company with a long history of luxury and performance. Maybe it's time we took a look at something that's got a little less skin in the game, but still should definitely be on your list. We're talking about a car from the brand that's fun to drive on Sunday, Hyundai, and their Genesis G80. Now, the G80 is often called the poor man's Mercedes-Benz, which, again, you're watching a video about cheap cars that make you look rich. You want a poor man's Benz. But we think the G80 actually stands out a little bit on its own, has a little bit of its own voice. Sure, Genesis hasn't been in the scene for nearly as long as any of the other brands mentioned on this list. But those of us in the tuning culture know that the Genesis Coupe was an absolute revolution in cheap performance cars. It was a relatively cheap V6 rear-wheel drive manual coupe that rivaled the 350Z out of the gate. But Genesis just wasn't going to limit itself to performance cars. They wanted to get into the luxury game, and they've done a pretty good job at it so far. The Genesis brand has actually adopted a lot of German designers and engineers into its stable, meaning that the G80 actually is a little bit German. Now, the G80 is the flagship for the Genesis brand. And if you're talking about a car that makes you look rich, flagship is always a great place to start. And it has everything you would want in a powerful luxury sedan. It's got a respectably powered V6, sending power to rear wheels or all wheels, and even the base model comes with 311 horsepower. There's a 311 joke in there somewhere, but the color of my energy is all wrong today. I can't really think of it. Anyway, that's not too shabby for something that's essentially a Hyundai underneath. So performance-wise, it hits the mark. Now the interior. The interior of the Genesis G80 is pure luxury, with leather and wood covering every surface. And the G80 we're talking about is only a few years old, so it still holds up. The G80 really showed what Genesis and Hyundai were capable of. And for that reason, the Genesis G80 definitely earned a spot on this list. It is just pure luxury from a brand that no one quite expected. And its modern aesthetic, and its big style, and its grandiose interior will make you feel like $1 million pretty much no matter where you drive it. But you won't have spent $1 million, because this Genesis G80 from 2017 is only 15,000 bucks. Throw some nice wheels on there with all the money you saved, and you've got a really fantastic looking luxury sedan. Just make sure when everyone asks you what it is, don't say a Hyundai, say a Genesis. That'll at least make them think that it's not a budget Korean car. Now, those of us in the know that nothing says that you have a boatload of money and a giant 401k and maybe some employees underneath you than driving a Volvo wagon.
See that Volvo station wagon over there?
I mean, seriously, drive around any extremely expensive part of any part of the world and you're gonna see some old Volvo station wagons in the driveways. And I know what you're thinking, a boxy Volvo wagon should definitely not be on a luxury car list. But to the untrained, a Volvo could definitely look like a luxury brand when it's out on the streets. I mean, Volvo doesn't exactly have the luxury history. For a long time there, they were basically making rolling refrigerators with some really fun performance models thrown into the mix. But in the past decade or so, Volvo's really been stepping it up in terms of luxury. I mean, if you look at Volvo's lineup today, there's no way you're saying Volvo is a poor man's brand. Sure, Volvo has a very understated design language, but I actually find that to make them actually look more luxurious. They're not trying that hard. I mean, in the rich man's watch game, some of the most simplest designed Rolexes are the most sought after. Or so I'm told. I can't even afford a Casio. Now, other than their understated looks, Volvos are known for being super utilitarian. And the XC70 is no exception. With all-wheel drive and a little bit of a ride height raise, the XC70 will get you through any kind of terrain or weather. And maybe even get you through some soft roading. Now, horsepower and speed aren't exactly the XC70's forte, but with how comfortable the cabin of an XC70 is, you won't be complaining about the slightly longer commute time. The interior is really the main appeal of the Volvo. Despite what it looks like on the outside, when you get your friends inside, they're gonna think you spent buku bucks on this. One of my favorite features of the Volvo XC70 is the waterfall console design, with a nice little gap underneath for storage. It's subtle, it's lovely, and even though this car is pretty old, it looks fantastic even today. And it definitely looks better than all that IKEA furniture that I can't even pronounce. But even from the outside, the Volvo XC70 does look the part. For how old this is, it does still look pretty contemporary. And that understated design language means that it's kind of timeless. It's not flashy, it's not trying to be anything, it doesn't have a bunch of wings and weird lines that make it look dated 5 years after it comes out. Any Volvo station wagon is kind of timeless by its design, as most great expensive things are. But thanks to market prices, the XC70 ain't that expensive. We found a 2008 model for under 7,000 bucks, meaning that for the spare change under your back seat, you can own a car that says to the world that I am not rich, I'm wealthy. All right, we've been around the world, but I think it's time we bring it back stateside. Sure, Cadillac is the best known American luxury car brand, but there is another. Don't fast forward, I know you're going to, but don't fast forward. We're gonna talk about Lincoln and the Lincoln MKZ. Yes, I know, Lincoln might not be your first choice when it comes to shopping for a used luxury car. But hear us out. I think that the Lincoln MKZ has a lot of things about it that make it a perfect blend of performance, luxury, and value fit for this list. The MKZ is a sleek, modern take on the classic Lincoln design language that they've perfected over the years. It's a pretty big, stylish luxury car. That is pretty much the criteria for this whole list. So what else do I have to say to get your butt into a Lincoln? How about an optional 3.7 liter V6? Paired with the fact that underneath the MKZ is a bunch of Ford Fusion underpinnings, meaning that the MKZ actually has a pretty good blend of comfort and performance and style. But once again, like my mother always says, it's not about what's on the outside, it's about what's on the inside, which is what mothers say to ugly people. So once again, I'm going to talk about the interior of a car as a qualifier for this list. The interior of the MKZ is really well designed and modern even by today's standards. Step inside the Lincoln MKZ and you're going to notice two things. One, hey, it's really nice in here. And two, where's the shifter? Yeah, there's no shifter in there, which some of you might think is terrible, but honestly, aesthetically, I think it looks really sick. Bonus, the seats can come both heated and cooled, so your little butt cheeks can be the perfect temperature anytime you want. And butt cheek health is what I'm all about here at Ideal Cars. And those seats can even be massage chairs. How can you say no to massage chairs? Which means that yes, it can be pretty hard to convince your friends to get into your frickin' old man Lincoln. But once they get inside, there's no denying that they are gonna feel like $1,000,000. And they might think that you've been doing pretty good lately, financially, even though no one's been doing good lately financially. And with prices of one that's like not even a decade old being under $10,000, I actually think the Lincoln MKZ is kind of a steal. So, you know, get your old man pants on and maybe invest in some golf clubs because you're buying a Lincoln. All right, maybe you don't want to try to convince your friends to get in your old man sedan Lincoln. Maybe you don't even have any friends. Well, then you might be thinking you need a little roadster. And sadly, the Miata does not make you look rich. One roadster that does, though, is the often forgotten BMW Z4. I mean, who can say no to having the wind in their hair? Especially if you have a lot of hair. I need a haircut. While also swimming around in leather and fanciness. No one says no to that. That's who. And that's why the BMW Z4 has earned a spot on this list. The Z4 continues the long tradition of making Z cars for BMW. Top down, cruising the coast with all the ultimate driving machine experience you can handle. BMW is really good at combining luxury and performance in all of their cars. But specifically, the Z series of cars has really been knocking it out of the park. Ever since the first Z1 hit the roads in 1989. The Z4 makes our list because it balances newness with affordability. I know a lot of you are probably thinking of the Z3, but to be honest, those just don't make anybody look rich anymore. The Z4 still has a contemporary design that stands up today. The Z4 packs the same inline 6-cylinder engine as most of the other good BMWs. And under that hood are 255 prancing little German ponies. But a horsepower number isn't really what makes a Z4 special, it's the power delivery. That inline 6 is legendarily smooth. I owned a 3 Series with the same engine. It's fantastic. So whether you're tracking the car or just Sunday driving it, that Z4 is gonna lay down power smoother than Barry White. And that smoothness also translates to the exterior styling, with swoops and bulges covering the Z4 from front to back. The Z4 is actually a pretty good head turner. And that's why you're considering the cars on this list, right? You want people to look at you and think you're rich. What you don't want them to know is that you only spent $7,500 to get your butt into the seat of this 2007 Z4. All right, it's time for the last car on this list. And we think we should go out with a real bang. We're throwing down the hammer on this one. And we're going full-blown AMG. I know what you're already thinking. There's no AMG that's affordable and luxurious that comes onto this list. Well, you're wrong, commenter. There is actually an AMG you can afford and drive around today. All the luxury and style and performance to smoke anyone that thinks they can take you on at a red light. The 2004 E55 AMG has it all wrapped up neatly in a bow for you. The compressor V8 under the hood packs 469 horsepower, all sent to the rear wheels. This is proper German shit. Meanwhile, it's not just some fast car. It's a Mercedes-Benz. It's a frickin' AMG. It's luxurious as hell inside. You'll be drowning in a sea of leather and wood and luxury and smells of old men that have driven the car for years. Bring your neck brace though, because you're gonna break your neck with how fast this frickin' thing is. It's intimidating, but still refined and luxurious. But it's also super practical because it's a freaking sedan. That means you can take your kids with you as you burn rubber and go through expensive tires. Put on a nice suit, a fake Rolex, and you're gonna look like a millionaire getting out of this thing. Regular people are gonna go, Mercedes? That's expensive. Car guys are gonna go, AMG? That's expensive. And your Tinder date? Well, they're gonna be looking at that back seat and admiring how much room there is back there. Now, a 2004 E55 AMG is still gonna run you around 20 grand right now, but that's just an insane value for a 450 horsepower flagship Mercedes sedan that will make you look like a bazillionaire. 20 grand is really not that much to spend for all that. And that makes the E55 AMG maybe one of the best values on the used market today, not even just for this list, but just as a car. So there you have it. That is our list of cars that are much cheaper than they look, that aren't total piles of crap like we usually talk about in these videos. Which car did you like the most? Or which car would you include on this list? Or what are you up to in life? Type whatever you want down below. But no matter what you do, make sure you like the video, subscribe to Ideal Cars, hit the little bell, because we're gonna keep bringing you content like this like every other day for free. And that, my friends, is living the ideal lifestyle. I'm that way.